in the fog-choked shadows of Victorian London, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson uncover a watchmaker's deadly secret, cipher device that could topple empires. A cryptic ledger, a forged suicide note, and a woman in green led them to the sinister. Horologists Guild, a cabal trading Britain's secrets to Berlin. As Holmes races to unravel the watch's hidden code, a traitor's blade strikes from within, and a single tick reveals the chilling truth. The killer is closer than he thinks. Can Holmes outwit a conspiracy that stretches beyond London, or will the Guild's gears grind him to dust? Chapter 1. The Curious Visitor. It was one of those raw, fog-laden evenings in the autumn of 1895, when the chill of the approaching winter seemed to seep through the very stones of London, that I found myself hastening back to the familiar sanctuary of 221B Baker Street. My medical practice, which had of late been unusually demanding, had kept me abroad until the lamps were lit and the streets thronged with the homeward-bound multitudes. The air was thick with the acrid scent of coal smoke, mingled with the damp exhalations from the Thames, and as I trudged up the 17 steps to our sitting room, my old Afghan wound throbbed with a dull persistence, a reminder of campaigns long past and battles fought under fiercer suns. Sherlock Holmes was there, as I had half expected, reclining in his armchair before a roaring fire that cast flickering shadows across the cluttered chamber. The room itself was a testament to his eccentric genius. Chemical apparatus littered the side table, where a recent experiment involving some noxious acid had left a fresh scar upon the wood. Newspapers, yellowed and crumpled, lay in heaps upon the floor, and upon the mantelpiece stood that Persian slipper stuffed with his coarse shag tobacco, alongside the unanswered correspondence skewered by a jackknife into the wooden shelf. Holmes himself, attired in his mouse-coloured dressing gown, had his long, thin fingers steepled beneath his chin, his hawk-like features drawn into an expression of profound abstraction. His violin lay across his knees, the bow dangling idly, as if he had but moments before ceased to draw from it those weird, improvisational strains that so often served as an outlet for his restless intellect. "Ah, Watson," said he, without so much as glancing in my direction, "you have had a trying day, I perceive. That limp of yours is more pronounced than usual. The barometer falls, and rain is imminent. But come, warm yourself by the fire. What tidings from the outer world? Has the mundane routine of pulses and prescriptions yielded anything of interest?" I hung my hat and coat upon the peg and sank gratefully into the basket chair opposite him, stretching my chilled limbs toward the blaze. "Little enough to intrigue a mind like yours, Holmes," I replied. "A case of influenza in Belgravia, a sprained ankle among the dock workers at Wapping, and an elderly gentleman in Mayfair convinced that his indigestion portends the end. The world plods on, my friend, in its prosaic fashion." He chuckled softly, a dry, mirthless sound. "Prosaic, indeed. Yet even in the humdrum, there lies the seed of mystery, if one but knows where to look. Take your elderly gentleman his symptoms, you say, a pallid complexion, perhaps, with tremors in the extremities." I stared at him in astonishment. "How on earth?" "Yes, precisely that, but I mention nothing of the sort. Elementary, my dear Watson. The cuff of your sleeve bears a faint stain of ipecacuanha, which you would administer for such a case, and your boots are splashed with the mud of Grosvenor Square, where such affluent hypochondriacs reside. But enough of trifles. I have been idle these 3 days past, and idleness is the devil's workshop for a brain like mine. Were it not for the cocaine bottle, he gestured languidly toward the morocco case upon the table, but I frowned in disapproval, and he let the sentence trail away. It was at that moment that our landlady, the estimable Mrs. Hudson, knocked discreetly upon the door. She entered bearing a card upon a salver, her face betraying a mixture of curiosity and concern. "A gentleman to see you, Mr. Holmes," she announced. "He seems in a great state of agitation, pacing the hall like a caged tiger." Holmes took the card, glancing at it with raised eyebrows. "Mr. Elias Thorne, watchmaker, Fleet Street," he read aloud. "Show him up, Mrs. Hudson. Watson, we may yet salvage this evening from boredom." The man who entered our room a moment later was of middle stature, perhaps 45 years of age, with a face that bore the marks of habitual precision and care, the countenance of one who dealt in the delicate intricacies of mechanisms rather than the coarser affairs of men. His hair, prematurely grey at the temples, was neatly combed, and his attire, though modest, was impeccably tailored, a frock coat of dark broadcloth, a waistcoat with a faint check pattern, and trousers pressed to a knife edge. Yet his eyes, deep-set and shadowed, held a wild, hunted look, and his hands trembled as he clutched a small leather case to his breast as if it were a talisman against some unseen peril. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" he inquired, his voice a hoarse whisper, laced with the accents of the Midlands. "I have heard of your reputation, sir, your uncanny ability to unravel the tangled skeins of human misfortune. I come to you in desperation, for the police dismiss my fears as the fancies of a grieving man." Holmes waved him to a chair with a courteous gesture. "Pray be seated, Mr. Thorne. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson, in whom you may confide as freely as in myself. Now, compose your thoughts and relate your story from the beginning. Omit no detail, however trivial it may seem." Thorne sank into the proffered seat, placing the leather case upon his lap. He drew a deep breath, as one steeling himself for a painful recital. "My name, as you know, is Elias Thorne. For the past 15 years, I have been in partnership with Mr. Reginald Hargrove in a small but reputable watchmaking establishment in Fleet Street. We specialized in the repair and crafting of fine timepieces, pocket watches, carriage clocks, even the occasional astronomical chronometer for gentlemen of scientific bent. Hargrove was the genius of our firm. His skill with the tiniest gears and springs was unparalleled. I handled the accounts and the clientele, but it was his artistry that drew patrons from as far as Edinburgh and Paris. He paused, his fingers drumming nervously upon the case. Holmes leaned forward, his keen grey eyes fixed upon the man's face. And this partnership, was it harmonious? No disputes over profits or methods? Thorne shook his head vehemently. "None, sir. We were as brothers. Hargrove was a widower, childless, and I have no family of my own save a sister in Manchester. Our lives revolved around the workshop, the rhythmic tick of escapements, the gleam of polished brass under the gaslight. But 8 days ago, tragedy struck. I arrived at the shop as usual, shortly before 9, to find the door unlocked and Hargrove, Hargrove hanging from a beam in the back room, a noose about his neck, his face contorted in death. I uttered an exclamation of horror, but Holmes remained impassive, though his pipe, which he had lit during the narrative, sent up a curl of blue smoke. Suicide, the authorities concluded. He prompted, "Yes, Mr. Holmes." A note was found clutched in his hand, in what appeared to be his writing. "I can bear the shame no longer. Forgive me. The coroner ruled itself murder. attributing it to financial distress. There were whispers of embezzlement funds missing from our accounts. But I know Hargrove as I know my own soul. He was incapable of such deceit and suicide. Never. He was a man of robust spirit, planning a holiday to the Lake District only the week before. Holmes nodded slowly. And what of this embezzlement? Have you examined the books? Thorne flushed slightly. I confess, sir, that aspect troubles me. There are discrepancies, sums unaccounted for, payments to unknown parties. But Hargrove handled the more esoteric commissions. Perhaps there were expenses I knew not of. No, the true anomaly lies here. With trembling hands, he opened the leather case and withdrew a pocket watch of exquisite craftsmanship. It was of gold, engraved with intricate scrollwork, and its chain, fine as spider silk, gleamed in the firelight. This was Hargrove's personal timepiece, Thorne continued. He carried it always, winding it each morning with ritual precision. Yet when I found him, the watch had stopped at exactly 3:17, presumably the hour of his death. But that cannot be. I saw him wind it at 8 the previous evening, and it was a 30-hour movement, fully capable of running well into the next day. Moreover, look inside. He pressed a catch, and the back sprang open to reveal the inner lid, upon which was etched in fine script, "The secret lies in the gears." Holmes took the watch with eager fingers, his eyes alight with that peculiar fire, which betokened the awakening of his extraordinary faculties. He held it to his ear, then examined it through his magnifying glass, turning it this way and that. A hunter case, Swiss movement, jeweled in 15 places, a fine piece, indeed. The stopping at 3:17, could it have been jarred in the ... Final struggle. Thorne leaned forward earnestly. Impossible, sir. Hargrove was meticulous. The watch was shock-resistant, designed for naval officers, and that inscription, it was not there when last I saw the watch open, some months ago. Hargrove must have added it recently, as a clue, a message from beyond the grave. I could see that Holmes was intrigued, though he masked it with his customary nonchalance. Tell me more of your partner's habits, Mr. Thorne. Did he have enemies, rivals in the trade, or perhaps a secret life, concealed even from you? Thorne pondered for a moment, his brow furrowed. Enemies? None that I knew. The watchmaking fraternity is small, competitive, but cordial. As for secrets, Hargrove was a solitary soul devoted to his craft. He spent evenings in his rooms above the shop, tinkering with inventions of perpetual motion device, he once jested, though I suspect it was mere fancy. Lately, however, he had been preoccupied with a special commission, a watch for a noble client, one that required unusual features. He spoke little of it, save that it involved a hidden mechanism. A noble client. Holmes's interest sharpened. His name, Lord Ashford, of Kensington, a collector of antiquities, with a passion for horology. Hargrove mentioned that the piece was to incorporate a compartment for, well, he did not specify, but I gathered it was for something confidential. Perhaps a miniature portrait or a lock of hair. Holmes set the watch upon the table, tapping it thoughtfully. And the police investigation. What did they make of the watch? Thorne snorted derisively. Precious little. Inspector Gregson dismissed it as irrelevant. A stopped watch in a suicide. Case means nothing, he said. They sealed the shop, questioned me briefly, and that was that. But I cannot rest, Mr. Holmes. Hargrove's spirit cries out for justice. And if it was murder, as I believe, then the perpetrator walks free, perhaps even now, plotting further mischief. There was a silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant rumble of a hansom cab in the street below. Holmes rose abruptly, pacing the room with long strides, his dressing gown swirling about him like a cloak. Murder, you say? Let us consider the facts. A man found hanged, a note in his hand, financial irregularities, the classic hallmarks of suicide. Yet the watch stops prematurely. An inscription appears mysteriously, and a secret commission looms. In the background, it is suggestive, Watson, is it not? Indeed, I agreed, but where to begin? Holmes halted before Thorne, his gaze piercing. With you, sir. Describe the scene in exact detail. The position of the body, the state of the room, any anomalies you noted. Thorne closed his eyes, as if reliving the horror. The back room is our workshop, a long, narrow space with benches along the walls, tools arrayed in orderly rows, clocks in various states of disassembly. The beam from which he hung is low, perhaps 7 feet from the floor. Hargrove was tall, near 6 feet. He must have stood upon a stool, which lay kicked over nearby. His face was purpled, eyes bulging. Forgive me, Doctor, but it was a sight to haunt one's dreams. The note was in his right hand, crumpled. Nothing else seemed amiss, save for a faint scratch upon the floorboards, as if something had been dragged across them. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Dragged. Interesting. And the door was forced. No, unlocked, as I said. We each had keys. Hargrove often worked late, and visitors. Did he expect anyone that night? Thorne shook his head. None that he mentioned, though there was a telegram delivered that afternoon, from Lord Ashford, I believe. Hargrove read it and burned it immediately, his face grave. Holmes resumed his pacing. A telegram burned, secrets upon secrets. Mr. Thorne, I will take your case. Tomorrow, at 10, we shall visit the workshop. Bring any documents pertaining to the partnership, and the coroner's report, if you have it. Thorne rose, his face alight. With gratitude, thank you, Mr. Holmes. You restore my faith in justice. The fee, Holmes waved it aside. We shall discuss that later. Good night, sir. As the door closed behind our visitor, Holmes flung himself back into his chair, retrieving the watch and scrutinizing it anew. What do you make of it, Watson? A puzzling affair, I admitted. The stopped watch suggests interference. Perhaps the killer halted it to set a false time of death. Precisely, and the inscription, the secret lies in the gears. A dying message. Or a red herring. Hargrove, if murdered, had time to etch it, but why not name his assailant outright? Perhaps he feared for others, I ventured. Or it refers to something literal within the watch. Holmes smiled enigmatically. We shall see. Pass me my lens, Watson. There may be more to this timepiece than meets the eye. Thus began one of the most intricate cases in my long association with Sherlock Holmes, a tangle of gears and greed that would lead us into the shadowed underbelly of London's elite. But that night, as the fog thickened outside our windows, we little suspected the depths to which it would plunge us. The hours wore on as Holmes delved deeper into his examination. He disassembled the watch partially, his deft fingers manipulating the tiny screws and springs with the precision of a surgeon. I watched in fascination, noting how the firelight danced upon the exposed mechanism, a labyrinth of wheels and pinions, each meshing with flawless accuracy. Observe, Watson, he murmured. The balance wheel is undamaged. the mainspring fully wound, yet arrested. Someone or something intervened. Poison, I suggested. A subtle toxin affecting the metal. He shook his head. Unlikely. But look here, a faint residue upon the stem. Oily, with a scent of machine lubricant, perhaps, but tinged with something acrid. And the gears, one bears a minute notch, as if filed recently. The clock upon the mantel struck midnight, and still Holmes laboured, his concentration unbroken. I, weary from my day's exertions, retired to my room, leaving him to his vigil. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by visions of hanging figures and ticking shadows. Morning dawned grey and drizzling, the rain pattering against the panes like impatient fingers. I descended to find Holmes unchanged, the watch reassembled upon the table, a triumphant gleam in his eye. Eureka, Watson, the secret is revealed, or part of it. Before he could elaborate, Mrs. Hudson announced breakfast, and Thorne arrived promptly at 10, bundled against the weather, carrying a portfolio of papers. "Gentlemen," he said, "I trust you rested well. I, alas, did not. Nightmares plagued me." Holmes, invigorated by his discovery, led the way downstairs. "Come, let us to Fleet Street. The game is afoot." The cab ride through the sodden streets was silent, each of us lost in thought. Fleet Street, that bustling artery of journalism and commerce, seemed subdued under the downpour, its pavements slick and echoing with the clatter of hooves. Thorne's shop was a narrow establishment wedged between a bookseller and a tavern, its cinder gilded clocks weighing creakily in the wind. Inside, the air was redolent of oil and metal. The counters lined with glass cases, displaying watches of every description. Silver hunters for gentlemen, enameled chatelaines for ladies, even a massive regulator clock ticking solemnly upon the wall. Thorne locked the door behind us and drew the blinds. "The workshop is through here." The back room was, as he had described, dim, despite a gas jet flickering overhead, with workbenches cluttered by tools loops, tweezers, files and half-completed timepieces. The beam from which Hargrove had dangled was marked by a fresh scar, where the rope had bitten into the wood. Holmes examined it closely, measuring the height with his tape. 6 feet 8 inches to the beam, he noted. Hargrove was 5 feet 11, you say? The stool, where is it? Thorne pointed to a wooden stool in the corner, its legs scarred. There, as the police left it. Holmes placed it beneath the beam, standing upon it. The noose would reach, but barely, and the scratches on the floor here, radiating from this point. He knelt, tracing faint lines in the dust. As if a struggle occurred, the body dragged into position. Thorne gasped. Then it was murder, undoubtedly, but staged to appear self-inflicted. "The note, did you see Hargrove write it?" "No, but the handwriting matched his sloping capitals, the peculiar flourish on the G. A clever forgery, perhaps. Watson, your medical opinion? Hanging causes asphyxia, but if unconscious first..." "Possible," I concurred. "A blow to the head, then strung up." Holmes nodded, turning to the workbench. "Hargrove's tools, anything missing?" Thorne inventoried them. "All present, save a small engraving tool he favoured for inscriptions. Used for the watch, no doubt. Now, the safe, you have won." "Yes, 4 valuables." Thorne opened a wall safe, revealing ledgers and pouches of gems. Holmes perused the books. "Discrepancies, as you said. Payments to VK. Who is that?" Thorne shrugged. "Unknown. Hargrove's private dealings, perhaps." The morning stretched into afternoon as Holmes scoured the room, his methods systematic yet inspired. He found a scrap of paper beneath the bench, bearing a symbol, a cogwheel entwined with a serpent. Familiar, Mr. Thorn. Thorn paled. The mark of the Horologists Guild, a society of master craftsmen. Hargrove was a member. I am not lacking the pedigree. A secret society, I inquired. Of sorts. Rumored to guard ancient knowledge or chemical timings, forbidden mechanisms. Holmes pocketed the scrap. Intriguing. And Lord Ashford, is he affiliated? I believe so. His commission may relate. We departed the shop as dusk fell, Holmes silent, absorbed. Back at Baker Street, he revealed his overnight discovery. The watch has a hidden compartment, Watson. Press here. A panel sprang open, disclosing a tiny vial of liquid. Poison, I exclaimed. Or ink, but more. Coordinates etched within 51 degrees 30 north, 0 degrees 7 west. Hyde Park, Thorn said. What can it mean? A rendezvous or burial? Sight, Holmes mused. Tomorrow we investigate, but beware, gentlemen. The gears turn and danger lurks in their shadows. Thus concluded our first day on the case, a web of intrigue spinning wider with each revelation. Little did we know the twists awaiting, the betrayals concealed in the heart of friendship and the cold calculations of ambition. Chapter 2. The scene of the tragedy the morning following. Mr. Elias Thorn's visit to 2-1B Baker Street broke with a sullen drizzle, the kind that clings to one's coat and chills the bones, rendering London a watercolor blur of grey and ochre. I rose to find Sherlock Holmes already dressed, his lean frame silhouetted against the window as he peered into the mist-shrouded street below. The pocket watch, that enigmatic relic of Reginald Hargrove's demise, lay upon the breakfast table, its gold casing catching the feeble light. Holmes had evidently been awake for hours, his mind a crucible of restless deduction, for the air was thick with the acrid tints of his chemical experiments, and a fresh burn mark marred the tablecloth. "Good morning, Watson," he said, without turning. "Your sleep was troubled. I observe your boots, still muddy from yesterday, are misplaced by the door, suggesting a distracted mind. But come, we have work to do. Thorn will meet us at the shop in an hour." I joined him at the table, noting the absence of his usual disdain for breakfast. A pot of coffee steamed beside a plate of untouched toast, evidence that his energies were wholly absorbed elsewhere. "You've made progress with the watch," I ventured. He turned, his grey eyes alight with that fierce intensity which heralded a breakthrough. "Indeed, the vial within the hidden compartment contains a solution, either poison nor ink, but a lubricant infused with a trace of mercury fulminate, a substance used in precision detonators. Curious, is it not, for a watchmaker's tool? And the coordinates Hyde Park, near the Achilles statues, suggest a rendezvous or cache. But we shall learn more anon. Finish your coffee. The cab awaits." We met Elias Thorn at his Fleet Street establishment promptly at 10, the rain having slackened to a fine mist that hung like a veil over the bustling thoroughfare. The shop, its signboard proclaiming Hargrove and Thorn, horologists, seemed to crouch between its neighbours, as if guarding secrets of its own. Thorn, clad in a heavy ulster, greeted us with a nod, his face drawn and pale, as though the weight of his partner's death had aged him overnight. He unlocked the door, and we stepped into the familiar dimness, the air heavy with the scent of polished metal and oiled wood, punctuated by the ceaseless ticking of myriad clocks. "Take us to the back room," Mr. Thorne, Holmes directed, his voice crisp. And touch nothing until I instruct otherwise. The workshop was much as Thorne had described. A narrow chamber, perhaps 20 feet by 10, with workbenches lining the walls, each laden with the delicate tools of the watchmaker's trade loop lenses, miniature screwdrivers, and files fine as needles. A gas jet flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the floorboards, which bore the faint scratches Thorne had mentioned. At the room's center, a stout oak beam spanned the ceiling, its surface marred where the fatal rope had bitten into. It, the stool, a simple wooden affair with worn legs, stood forlornly in a corner, as if shunned by the tragedy it had witnessed. Holmes moved with the precision of a predator, his eyes darting from beam to floor to bench. He knelt first at the scratches, tracing their arcs with a gloved finger. "These are fresh," he murmured, radiating from a point beneath the beam. Not deep, but irregular, as if made by a heavy object dragged under protest. "Watson, your medical eye what would cause such marks in a hanging?" I considered, visualizing the scene. If Hargrove struggled, his boots might have scuffed the floor as he was hoisted. Or, if unconscious, his body could have been dragged into position after a blow. Precisely. Holmes rose, measuring the beam's height with his tape. 6 feet 8 inches to the underside. Hargrove was 5 feet 11, Thorne said. The stool is 18 inches high. A man standing upon it could just reach the beam to secure a rope, but the mechanics are awkward. Observe the knot scar-high near the beam's edge. A suicide would tie it centrally for ease. This suggests another hand. Thorne, standing by the door, wrung his hands. "Then you confirm it, Mr. Holmes?" "Murder." Holmes did not answer directly, but turned to the workbench nearest the beam. It was cluttered with tools and half-assembled timepieces, their gears glinting like tiny constellations. He examined each item through his magnifying glass, pausing at a small brass gear, no larger than a shilling, lying apart from the rest. "This is out of place," he said, holding it to the light. "The teeth are uneven, as if filed hastily. Was Hargrove working on this?" Thorne approached, peering at the gear. "Not that I recall. He was consumed with Lord Ashford's commissioner. Watch with a concealed compartment. He kept the details close, even from me." Holmes pocketed the gear, his expression inscrutable. "The safe, Mr. Thorne. Open it." Thorne hesitated, then moved to a panel behind a regulator clock, revealing a small iron safe. He turned the combination with trembling fingers, and the door swung open to disclose ledgers, a pouch of gemstones, and a bundle of letters tied with twine. Holmes seized the ledgers, flipping through pages of meticulous entries. Payments to VK, frequent, substantial, and unannotated. "You claimed ignorance of these, Mr. Thorne." "I did, sir," Thorne replied, his voice strained. "Hargrove managed certain clients directly, especially those of high station. I assumed VK was a supplier, perhaps for rare components." Holmes's eyes narrowed. Assumptions are the bane of truth. And these letters. Thorne untied the bundle, revealing correspondence in Hargrove's hand, mostly orders for materials. One, however, caught Holmes's attention, a half-burnt fragment, the edges charred as if retrieved from a fire. It bore the same Cogwillan serpent symbol we had seen yesterday. Alongside a single line, "The pendulum swings east." 3:17. "This was in the grate when I found him," Thorne said. "I thought it mere refuse." Holmes held the paper to his nose, inhaling faintly. The same acrid scent as the watch's residue. Mercury fulminate again, perhaps used to ignite it. And the time 3:17, matching the watch's arrest. A deliberate clue, Watson, planted for us to find. I frowned. But why such obliquity? If Hargrove suspected foul play, why not name his killer? A question for later, Holmes replied. First, the body's disposition. Describe it exactly, Mr. Thorne, every detail. Thorne swallowed hard, his eyes distant. He hung from the beam, the rope tight about his neck, his face, ghastly, purpled, with eyes protruding. His hands were limp, the note crumpled in his right. His feet dangled, a foot above the floor, the stool overturned nearby. His coat was askew, as if pulled during a struggle, and his shirt collar was torn. Holmes nodded, pacing the room. Torn collar, dragged marks, a rope awkwardly tied. The picture emerges. Hargrove was attacked, possibly struck unconscious, then hoisted to simulate suicide. The note, where is it now? With the police, Thorne said. Inspector Gregson took it, along with Hargrove's personal effects. Then we must to Scotland Yard. But first Holmes knelt again, examining the floorboards near the workbench. He extracted a pin-sized shard of glass, glinting faintly, from a vial, perhaps broken in haste. The plot thickens. We departed the shop, Thorne locking it with a heavy heart. The cab ride to Scotland Yard was silent, Holmes lost in thought, his fingers drumming upon the watch in his pocket. At the Yard, Inspector Gregson, a burly man with a perpetually skeptical air, received us with ill-concealed impatience. Holmes, what now? He grumbled. This Hargrove business is closed suicide, plain as day. The note, the debts, the locked room. What more do you want? The truth, Holmes replied coolly. Show me the note. Gregson produced it from a file. A single sheet, creased and stained, bearing the words, I can bear the shame no longer. Forgive me. The handwriting was indeed Hargrove's, with the distinctive flourish Thorne had described. But Holmes's lens revealed more. The ink smudges leftward, he said. Hargrove was right-handed, was he not, Mr. Thorne? Yes, Thorne confirmed. Then he did not write this under duress. A left-handed forger, perhaps, or a right-handed one taking pains to mislead. And the paper German, from its watermark. Curious for a London watchmaker, Gregson scoffed. Conjecture, Holmes. You see mysteries in shadows. Shadows often conceal the sharpest truths, Holmes retorted. I shall need access to Hargrove's effects. Reluctantly, Gregson complied, leading us to a storeroom where a box contained Hargrove's belongings, a pipe, a pocket knife, a notebook filled with technical sketches. Holmes lingered over the notebook, noting diagrams of a complex watch mechanism. Rotor, unlike any standard escapement. This is no ordinary timepiece, he murmured. A cipher device, perhaps embedded in Lord Ashford's commission. Back at Baker Street, Holmes spread the evidence before the fire. The watch, the gear, the glass shard, the burnt fragment. The secret lies in the gears, he mused. Hargrove encoded a warning 3:17, the pendulum swinging east. But to what end? A rendezvous in Hyde Park, a traitor's name, or something more arcane? I ventured a theory. The Horologists Guild, could they be involved? A society guarding forbidden knowledge might kill to protect it. Holmes nodded, a plausible thread. Ashford's role looms large as telegram, burnt. His symbol, omnipresent. Tomorrow we visit his lordship. But tonight, Watson, I must consult my informants. The underworld may know more of this guild than we. He donned his coat and vanished into the night, leaving me to ponder the labyrinth we had entered. The watch ticked softly on the table, as if counting down to some unseen reckoning. Chapter 3. The Noble Client. The morning after our visit to Scotland Yard. A thin sunlight pierced the fog that had clung to London for days, casting a pale glow over Baker Street. I found Sherlock Holmes at his chemical table, the air sharp with the scent of reagents, his long fingers manipulating a pipette with surgical precision. The watchmaker's pocket watch lay beside him, its hidden compartment open, the tiny vial of mercury-laced lubricant glinting under the lamp. Holmes's face bore the marks of a sleepless night, but his eyes were alight with that restless energy which betokened a mind fully engaged. "Good morning, Watson," he greeted, not looking up. "You slept soundly, I trust. Your boots are polished this morning, a sign of restored composure. We have an appointment with Lord Ashford at 11 time enough for you to breakfast, but do be quick." I settled at the table, where Mrs. Hudson had laid out a modest spread of kippers and toast. "You've been at it all night, I presume?" I asked, noting the array of glassware and the notebook open to Hargrove's cryptic rotor sketches. "Indeed," Holmes replied, setting aside the pipette. "The lubricant is a curious compound mercury fulminate, as I suspected, but mixed with an oil used in precision machinery, likely for a device requiring both stability and a trigger mechanism. Hargrove's notebook suggests a watch that is more than a timekeeper, a cipher machine, perhaps disguised as a gentleman's accessory. Lord Ashford's commission is the key, and I intend to unlock its secrets today." We set out for Kensington in a hansom, the streets alive with the clatter of commerce and the cries of newsboys hawking the latest scandals. Lord Ashford's residence, a grand Georgian pile in a quiet square, loomed like a monument to aristocratic privilege, its windows gleaming with the polish of wealth. A liveried footman admitted us to a hall adorned with marble busts and tapestries, where we were soon ushered into a study that seemed more a museum than a room for daily use. Shelves groaned under the weight of ancient tomes, and glass cabinets displayed artifacts, Etruscan vases, Chinese jade, and, notably, a collection of antique timepieces, from sundials to ornate pocket watches. Lord Ashford himself awaited us, a man of some 50 years, portly yet imposing, with a florid complexion, and a moustache that twitched like a nervous barometer. He wore a morning coat of impeccable cut, and upon his cuffs gleamed gold links engraved with the now familiar cogwheel and serpent symbol of the Horologists Guild. His manner was courteous but guarded, as if he weighed each word before speaking. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said, rising from a leather armchair. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I trust it concerns some trifling matter of my collection." Holmes seated himself without invitation, his gaze fixed on Ashford's face. "No trifling matter, my lord. We come regarding the death of Reginald Hargrove, your watchmaker. You commissioned a timepiece from him, I understand one with a hidden compartment." Ashford's moustache quivered, but he maintained his composure. "Indeed, a sad business, his death. Suicide, I heard. Debts, no doubt. As for the watch, it was to be a gift, a novelty with a compartment for a miniature portrait. Hargrove was skilled, but I fear his financial troubles overwhelmed him." Holmes leaned forward, his voice low and incisive. "Financial troubles. Curious, when your payments to him were substantial. And this symbol," he gestured to Ashford's cufflinks. "The Horologists Guild, I presume. A society of more than mere craftsmen, if rumour is to be believed." Ashford's eyes narrowed, a flush creeping up his neck. A harmless association of enthusiasts, Mr. Holmes. We share a passion for horologies, art, and history. As for Hargrove, he was a member, yes, but I know little of his affairs beyond our transaction. Holmes produced the burnt fragment from the workshop, holding it delicately. This was found in Hargrove's grate, bearing your guild's mark and the phrase "the pendulum swings east." 3:17, the same time his watch stopped prematurely for a fully wound movement. Care to explain? Ashford's hand tightened on the arm of his chair, but his voice remained steady. I sent no such note. Hargrove was eccentric. Perhaps he scribbled it in a moment of despair. As for the watch, I expected delivery next month. His death has inconvenienced me greatly. Inconvenienced, I interjected, unable to contain my indignation. A man is dead, my lord, and you speak of inconvenience. Ashford waved a dismissive hand, a figure of speech. Doctor, I mean no disrespect, but I have no further information. Hargrove's work was confidential, as he insisted. Holmes's smile was thin as a blade. Confidential, yet you paid sums to an unknown VK. Through his accounts, a collaborator, perhaps, in this novel timepiece. Ashford rose abruptly, his composure fraying. You overstep, sir. My affairs are private, and I resent your insinuations. I bid you good day. Holmes stood, unruffled. We shall take our leave, but rest assured, my lord, the gears of truth are turning. We will meet again. As we stepped into the square, the footman closing the door with a thud, Holmes chuckled softly. A guilty conscience, Watson. Did you note his cufflinks? The serpent's head is worn, suggesting frequent handling novice habit, perhaps. And his denial of the note was too swift, too rehearsed. He knows more than he admits. I agreed. But what of this VK? A partner in the guild? Or a foreign agent? Holmes mused. The German watermark on the suicide note, the mercury fulminate, the rotor sketches all point to espionage. Hargrove's watch may conceal a cipher device, vital to national interests. Ashford's wealth and position make him a plausible conduit. Our next stop was a telegraph office, where Holmes dispatched messages to his network of informant street Arabs, cabbies, and less savoury characters who thrived in London's underbelly. The guild is our shadow, he said, as we returned to Baker Street. Its members guard secrets older than the clocks they craft. We must tread carefully. That evening, as rain resumed its patter against the windows, Holmes pored over Hargrove's notebook, deciphering the rotor diagrams. This is no mere watch, he said, tracing a sketch. The gears align to encode messages, each position a letter or number. Hargrove stumbled upon a plot, perhaps Ashford's, perhaps another's, and paid the ultimate price. I frowned. But why the coordinates? Hyde Park is public, exposed. A drop point, Holmes replied. The Achilles statue is isolated. At dawn, tomorrow, we investigate. But first he arose, donning his Inverness cape. I must visit a certain pawnbroker in Whitechapel. He knows the guild's whispers. Holmes returned at midnight, his face grim. The pawnbroker confirms the guild's reach extends to the continent. A Prussian named Viktor Krause, exiled for political intrigues, was seen with Ashford last month. VK, wasn't the initials fit? Then Krause is our man. I asked, perhaps, but the notes left would smudge troubles me. Krause, I'm told, is right-handed. Another hand holds the noose. As I retired, The watch ticked on, its secrets locked in brass and gold, a silent witness to a conspiracy that threatened to unravel far beyond the walls of Baker Street. Chapter 4. The Hidden Compartment. The dawn broke over London with a reluctant pallor, the sky a canvas of leaden clouds that promised further rain. I found Sherlock Holmes already at work in our Baker Street lodgings, seated at the deal table, with the watchmaker's pocket watch disassembled before him, its intricate components arrayed like a surgeon's instruments. The fire burned low, casting a warm glow over the chaos of papers, chemical vials, and Hargrove's cryptic notebook, which lay open to a diagram of interlocking rotors. Holmes's dressing gown hung loosely about his spare frame, and his eyes, though shadowed from another sleepless night, gleamed with the fervor of discovery. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice crisp despite the hour. "You rise, light sure, shaving mirror, still damp, betrays a leisurely toilette. But no matter, we are on the cusp of revelation. Observe this." He held up a tiny brass panel, no larger than a sovereign, its surface etched with minute grooves. The watch's hidden compartment, sprung open by a sequence of pressures on the stem and case. Hargrove was a genius. His craftsmanship conceals more than mere time. I peered at the panel, marveling at its delicacy. "What did you find?" Within, Holmes gestured to a slip of paper, folded tightly and resting beside the watch's mainspring. "This, and the vial we noted yesterday. The paper bears coordinates 51 degrees 30 minutes north, 0 degrees 7 minutes west, and a phrase, 'The pendulum swings east.' The vial, I've confirmed, contains a mercury fulminate solution, likely used to stabilize or trigger a mechanism. But the paper is the key. Unfold it, Watson." I did so, revealing a cramped script in Hargrove's hand, the ink fresh and unfaded. The coordinates pointed, as we had deduced, to Hyde Park, near the Achilles statue. The phrase, cryptic yet deliberate, echoed the burnt fragment from the workshop. "A message," I said, "left for someone to find. But why hide it so?" Holmes reassembled the watch with deft fingers, his movements as precise as the mechanism itself. Hargrove feared exposure. His commission for Lord Ashford, a cipher device, I am certain, was no mere trinket. The rotors in his sketches suggest a portable encoding machine, capable of securing or breaking diplomatic codes. Such a device, in the wrong hands, could shift the balance of power. Hargrove, I suspect, discovered a plot and encoded his warning within the watch, knowing it would outlive him. I frowned, pouring coffee from the pot Mrs. Hudson had left. But why not alert the authorities directly? Why this elaborate subterfuge? Fear, Watson? Or loyalty to the Horologists Guild, whose symbol recurs with ominous frequency? Hargrove was a man of principle, caught in a web of intrigue. The coordinates suggest a physical clue, perhaps evidence he secreted away. We shall investigate at dawn tomorrow, but first we must trace this VK. The Prussian, Viktor Krause, looms large. Holmes rose, pacing the room with that restless energy which betokened a mind racing ahead of the evidence. Last night's inquiries yielded fruit. My Whitechapel contactor, disreputable but reliable, fence confirmed Krause's presence in London, lodging in a tavern near the docks. He is a man of science, exiled for seditious activities in Berlin, unknown to frequent guild meetings. His connection to Ashford is no coincidence. Then we confront him. I asked, my hands straying to the revolver I kept in the drawer, a relic of my army days. Not yet, Holmes replied. Krause is a shadow, slippery and dangerous. We need leverage proof of his role in Hargrove's death. The suicide notes. German watermark and leftward smudge suggest a forger, but Krause's right-handedness complicates matters. Another player lurks, Watson one we have yet to see. Our morning was interrupted by the arrival of a telegram, delivered by a breathless boy from the post office. Holmes tore it open, his brow furrowing as he read. From Lestrade, he said, "The coroner's report on Hargrove is ready. He invites us to view it reluctantly, no doubt. Come, Watson, Scotland Yard awaits." The cab ride through London's bustling streets was a study in contrasts. The grandeur of Westminster spires juxtaposed with the squalor of side alleys, where costermongers hawked their wares and urchins darted like minnows. At Scotland Yard, Inspector Lestrade greeted us with his usual blend of exasperation and grudging respect, his ferret-like features twitching as he led us to his cramped office. "Holmes, you're stirring a hornet's nest," he said, tossing a file onto his desk. "Hargrove's case is closed suicide, plain as day. The coroner found asphyxia by hanging. No signs of a struggle beyond the torn collar. Why can't you let it rest?" Holmes ignored the question, seizing the report and scanning it with predatory focus. "Asphyxia, yes, but note the bruising subtle at the base of the skull. A blow, perhaps, delivered before the noose. And the stomach contents traces of chloral hydrate, a sedative. Hargrove was incapacitated. Lestrade then strung up to deceive you." Lestrade snorted. "Fancy theories, Holmes." The note was in his hand, the door locked. The debt's real. Occam's razor, man's suicide fits. Occam's razor cuts both ways, Holmes retorted, producing the watch and clicking open its hidden compartment. This was Hargrove's final actor message, concealed from his killer. The coordinates point to Hyde Park, the phrase to a conspiracy, and the notes smudged leftward on German paper. Hargrove was right-handed, his suppliers British. Explain that. Lestrade's skepticism wavered, but he waved us off. "Do what you must, but don't expect the Yard to chase phantoms. I've murders enough without your conspiracies." Back at Baker Street, Holmes spread the evidence before the fire. The watch, the brass gear, the glass shard, the burnt fragment, and now the coroner's report. Chloral hydrate, he mused. Administered how? A drink, perhaps, shared with a trusted friend or foe. The glass shard from the workshop likely from a broken vial. Hargrove was drugged, struck, and hanged, all to mask murder as despair. I nodded, piecing it together. Ashford's payments to VK. Could Krause have supplied the sedative? Or the mercury fulminate? Possibly, Holmes said. But the Guild's role grows clearer. Their symbol, their secrets, this cipher watch was no private venture. It was commissioned for espionage, and Hargrove's conscience rebelled. He left clues: the watch, the fragment, the coordinates to expose the plot. As evening fell, Holmes donned his disguiser, tattered coat and slouch hat, transforming him into a dockside laborer. "I go to the tavern where Krause lodges," he said. "Stay here, Watson, and guard the watch. Its gears hold the truth, and I suspect our enemies know it." He vanished into the night, leaving me to sit by the fire, the watch ticking softly in my hand. Its weight felt heavier than gold, as if it carried the burden of Hargrove's final moments. I could not shake the sense that we were but pawns in a larger game. The pendulum swinging ever eastward toward an unseen reckoning. Chapter 5. Shadows in the park. The first light of dawn crept over London. a feeble glow that struggled against the heavy mist rolling in from the Thames. I awoke to find Sherlock Holmes already dressed, his Inverness cape draped over his shoulders, the watchmaker's pocket watch secure in his waistcoat pocket. The air in our Baker Street rooms was sharp with the lingering scent of tobacco and chemicals, evidence of Holmes's nocturnal labours. His face, though pale from lack of rest, bore the taut alertness of a hound on the scent, and his fingers drummed an impatient rhythm on the arm of his chair. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice brisk. "You slept soundly, I see. Pillow is undisturbed, and your boots are freshly polished, a sign of Mrs. Hudson's diligence. We must be off to Hyde Park at once. The coordinates 51 degrees, 30 minutes north, 0 degrees, 7 minutes west point to the Achilles statue, and the hour is propitious for uncovering Hargrove's secret." I dressed hurriedly, grabbing my revolver from the drawer, its weight a reassuring presence in my coat pocket. "You expect trouble?" I asked, noting the bulge of Holmes's own weapon beneath his cape. "Always," he replied with a grim smile. "The pendulum swings east, Watson, and I suspect it swings toward danger." Hargrove's clues were not meant for idle eyes. We took a hansom through the silent streets, the city still half asleep under its shroud of fog. Hyde Park loomed as a vast, shadowed expanse, its trees spectral in the mist, the paths deserted save for a lone groundskeeper sweeping leaves. The Achilles statue, a towering bronze figure commemorating Wellington's victories, stood solitary. At the park's southeastern edge, its base surrounded by damp grass and low shrubs. Holmes consulted a pocket compass, confirming the coordinates with a nod. "Here," he said, kneeling beside the statue's plinth, his gloved hands probing the earth. "The soil is lusacenly disturbed. Fetch a stick, Watson, and assist." Me. I found a fallen branch and joined him, digging carefully through the sodden ground. Within minutes, my stick struck something solid, a small metal box, no larger than a cigar case, its surface pitted with rust, but sealed tight. Holmes pried it open with a penknife, revealing a folded ledger page, its edges yellowed but intact. In Hargrove's meticulous hand were listed names, dates, and sums, each entry cryptic yet suggestive. Ashford 2V, K10,000 silence on the affair. Guild to Berlin, 5,000 delivery secured. "Blackmail," I exclaimed, peering over his shoulder. Hargrove uncovered a transaction, Ashford paying this VK to keep quiet about some scandal. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Or espionage." The reference to Berlin, the Guild's involvement, these are no petty indiscretions. This ledger is a fragment of a larger web. Watson and Hargrove died to protect it. He tucked the page into his pocket, scanning the surroundings with a predator's vigilance. "We are not alone." A rustle in the nearby shrubs confirmed his words. Before I could react, a cloaked figure burst from the foliage, a pistol flashing in the dim light. A shot rang out, grazing my arm with a sting like a hornet's. I cried out, clutching the wound. As Holmes lunged forward, his stick raised like a saber, the assailant, face obscured by a scarf, fired again, the bullet striking the statue's base with a metallic clang. Holmes gave chase, his long strides eating the distance, but the figure vanished into the fog, swallowed by the park's labyrinthine paths. "Watson, are you hurt?" Holmes called, returning to my side, his face taut with concern. "A scratch," I said, rolling up my sleeve to reveal a shallow gash, already clotting. "But who was that? Krause?" Holmes shook his head, examining the ground where the figure had stood, too slight for Krause, who was described as gaunt but tall. These footprints small, with a narrow heel. A woman, perhaps, or a youth. And this he plucked a single thread from a thorn, dark green and finely woven. Expensive cloth, not a common ruffian's garb. We retraced our steps to Baker Street, my arm bandaged with Holmes's handkerchief, the ledger page burning. A metaphorical hole in his pocket. Back in our rooms, he spread it before the fire, alongside the watch, the brass gear, the glass shard, and the burnt fragment. The plot thickens, he murmured. Ashford's payments to VK align with the Guild's transactions to Berlin. Hargrove stumbled upon a conspiracy, perhaps a sale of secrets, with his cipher watch as the key. I frowned, nursing my arm. But why attack us now? If they knew of the box, why not retrieve it themselves? Holmes lit his pipe, sending up a curl of smoke. They didn't know until we led them to it. Our inquiries have stirred the hive, Watson. Someone watches us. Someone with access to Hargrove's clues. The thread suggests wealth, the shot precision. We must tread warily. That afternoon, Holmes dispatched telegrams to his informants, seeking word of a woman or youth connected to the Guild or Ashford. Meanwhile, he examined the ledger page under his lens, noting the ink's composition identical to that in the watch's hidden note. Hargrove's work, he said. He hid this to expose the truth, knowing his life was forfeit. As evening fell, a knock announced Billy, the page boy, with a message from Holmes's Whitechapel contact. Krause was seen last night at a tavern, arguing with a woman dark-haired, well-dressed, wearing a green cloak, Billy reported. They spoke of a device and the Guild's honor. Holmes's eyes narrowed. A woman in green. The thread matches. Watson, we must infiltrate the Guild itself. Their next meeting is rumored for tomorrow night, in a hall near Whitechapel. Disguises will be necessary. He spent the evening preparing, donning the garb of a journeyman watchmaker tweed cap, worn waistcoat, and a tool satchel to complete. The ruse, I followed suit, my army training lending me a passable air of rough trade. Stay close, Watson, Holmes warned as we set out into the night. The Guild's secrets are guarded by more than locks. The meeting hall, tucked behind a nondescript warehouse, was lit by flickering gaslight, its windows shrouded in heavy drapes. We slipped in among a crowd of artisans, their faces stern and secretive. The air hummed with whispered talk of the great mechanism, a device, some said, that could master time itself. Holmes's eyes gleamed as he overheard Lord Ashford's voice, sharp and commanding, from a shadowed corner. The watch must not fall into the wrong hands. A gaunt man, Viktor Krause, by description, replied in a heavy Prussian accent. It is secure, my lord. But the watchmakers, meddling his clues, threaten us all. Holmes nudged me, his whisper barely audible. Krause and Ashford, conspiring openly. The device is the cipher watch, and Hargrove's death was their doing. But the woman in green shay is the key. We withdrew before suspicion fell upon us, the fog cloaking our retreat. Back at Baker Street, Holmes paced, the ledger page in hand. The pendulum swings east, he mused. Berlin, espionage, a woman's hand. Tomorrow, Watson, we hunt the shadows in Hyde Park and the truth in their wake. Chapter 6. The Guild's Whisper. The morning after our perilous encounter in Hyde Park. A dense fog enveloped London, cloaking the city in a spectral veil that muffled sound and blurred form. I awoke to find Sherlock Holmes seated by the fire. In our Baker Street rooms, The watchmaker's pocket watch opened before him, its gears glinting like tiny stars under the lamplight. The ledger page from the park, the brass gear, the glass shard, and the burnt fragment lay arranged on the table, a constellation of clues pointing to an unseen truth. Holmes's face was drawn, his eyes sharp with the intensity of a man who had wrestled with shadows through the night. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice low but vibrant with purpose. "Your arm, I trust, is no worse for yesterday's adventure." The graze was superficial, but infection is a cunning foe. I flexed my bandaged arm, wincing slightly. "Sore, but manageable. You've been at it again, I see. Any new revelations?" Holmes gestured to the ledger page. "This document is a cipher of its own names and sums. Veiled references to the affair and delivery secured. Ashford's payments to Viktor Krause, I am certain, suggest a transaction beyond mere commerce. The Guild's mention of Berlin points to espionage, and Hargrove's cipher watch was the linchpin. But the woman in the green cloak, she is the enigma. Her thread, her precision with a pistol, her presence at Krause's side last night all suggest a role more central than we imagined." I poured coffee, the aroma a welcome counterpoint to the chill seeping through the windows. "Then we pursue her, or confront Krause directly." Holmes shook his head, reassembling the watch with deft fingers. "Neither, yet. The Horologists Guild is our true quarry. Their meeting last night revealed a conspiracy, but not its scope. The great mechanism they spoke of is no metaphor. It is Hargrove's watch, or a prototype thereof, designed to encode secrets that could sway nations. We must infiltrate deeper, Watson, to their inner sanctum. My informants whisper of a second meeting tonight in a crypt beneath a Whitechapel chapel, reserved for the Guild's elite." The day passed in a flurry of preparation. Holmes dispatched telegrams to his network Wiggins and his urchins. A Billingsgate fishmonger with ears in low places, a disgraced jeweller who knew the Guild's outer circles. By noon, he had secured plans of the chapel, an ancient structure repurposed by the Guild for their clandestine rites. Disguises were refined. Holmes adopted the guise of a Swiss horologist, complete with a faint accent and a monocle, while I posed as his apprentice, my army bearing lending credence to a rougher demeanor. My revolver, cleaned and loaded, rested in my pocket, a silent assurance against the dangers ahead. As dusk fell, we ventured into Whitechapel, the fog thicker now, swallowing gaslight and rendering the streets a maze of indistinct shapes. The chapel loomed from the mist, its spire a jagged silhouette against the clouded sky. A side door, half hidden by ivy, led to a stone staircase descending into darkness. Holmes lit a small lantern, its beam revealing damp walls etched with the cogwheel land serpent symbol. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of mold and wax. At the crypt's entrance, a hooded figure demanded a password. Holmes murmured, "Tempus fugit," a phrase gleaned from his fence, and we were admitted into a vaulted chamber lit by flickering candles. A dozen men stood in a semicircle, their faces obscured by half-masks, each bearing the Guild's emblem on a chain about their necks. At the center, upon a stone plinth, stood a model of a complex mechanism, or watch, but a larger device. Its rotors and gears worry softly, as if alive. Lord Ashford presided, his voice resonant with authority. "Brothers of the Guild," he intoned, "the great mechanism nears completion. Hargrove's betrayal has delayed us, but the Prussian assures delivery to our allies in Berlin. The watch must be secured, its secrets guarded." Viktor Krause stepped forward, his gaunt frame unmistakable, his accent sharp. "The watch is safe, my lord, hidden where none but we can find it. But Holmes, this meddler grows too close. He found the ledger in the park." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Holmes, standing beside me in the shadows, tensed, his hand brushing the concealed stick in his coat. I felt my pulse quicken, the weight of my revolver a cold comfort. Then, "He must be stopped," Ashford declared. "The woman has failed us once. She will not miss again." The woman in green, I thought, my mind racing to the cloaked figure in Hyde Park. Holmes leaned close, his whisper barely audible. "Note the third man from the left, his mask slips, revealing a scar on his jaw. That is Silas Crane, a known forger. The note. What's in his handiwork?" Perhaps before we could glean more, a candle flickered, casting light on my face. A masked figure pointed, his voice sharp. "Intruders, seize them." Chaos erupted. Holmes flung his lantern, shattering it against the plinth, and the flames briefly scattered the guild. I drew my revolver, firing a warning shot into the ceiling as we bolted for the stairs. Footsteps pounded behind us, and a blade glinted in the dark, narrowly missing Holmes's shoulder. We burst into the chapel, the fog our ally as we fled into the night, losing our pursuers in Whitechapel's labyrinth. Back at Baker Street, breathless and disheveled, Holmes lit his pipe, his eyes alight with triumph despite the danger. "A near thing, Watson, but profitable. The guild's inner circle is exposed. Ashford, Krause, and Crane. A forger whose left-handed scrawl matches our note smudge. The woman remains elusive, but her role is pivotal." I bandaged a fresh scrape on my hand, sustained in our escape. "And the mechanism, a larger cipher device." "Precisely," Holmes said, spreading Hargrove's notebook before us. The watch was a prototype, portable but limited. The larger machine, if completed, could decipher entire codebooks priceless to a foreign power. Hargrove's conscience rebelled, and he hid the watch to thwart them. I frowned. "But where is it now?" Krause said, "It's hidden." Holmes tapped the ledger page. "The pendulum swings east, perhaps a literal clue. The watch may be concealed in an eastern district, or with an ally beyond our ken. Tomorrow we hunt Krause. His lodgings hold the next thread." As I retired, the fog pressed against the windows, a silent witness to the secrets we chased. The watch, now locked in Holmes's strongbox, seemed to pulse with Hargrove's final warning, its gears turning toward a truth as dangerous as it was inevitable. Chapter 7. The Prussian's Tale. The morning after our perilous infiltration of the Horologists Guild. A sharp wind swept through London, dispersing the fog and leaving the city raw and exposed under a sky of scudding clouds. I awoke to find Sherlock Holmes pacing our Baker Street rooms, the watchmaker's pocket watch secure in his strongbox, its secrets guarded by steel and lock. The ledger page, the brass gear, the glass shard, and the burnt fragment lay upon the table alongside Hargrove's notebook, its rota sketches a silent testament to a conspiracy that grew darker with each revelation. Holmes's face was taut, his eyes burning with the intensity of a man who sensed the net tightening around his quarry. "Good morning, Watson," he said, pausing to light his pipe. "Your hand, I see, bears a fresh bandage. Our Whitechapel escapade left its mark, but no matter. Today we hunt the Prussian. Viktor Krause's lodgings hold the next thread in this tangled skein." I flexed my scraped hand, the sting a reminder of our narrow escape. You're certain Krause is our man? The woman in green shy fired the shot in Hyde Park. Holmes nodded, exhaling a curl of smoke. She is a key, but Krause is the lock. His presence at the Guild, his payments from Ashford, his Prussian origins align with the German watermark and the cipher device. The woman may be his agent or his puppet. We shall know soon enough. We breakfasted sparingly, Holmes too, absorbed to eat, and set out for the docks, where Krause lodged above a tavern known as the Black Anchor. The East End was a labyrinth of narrow alleys and soot-stained tenements, the air thick with the reek of fish and tar. The tavern itself was a squat, grimy building, its windows clouded with grease, its sign creaking in the wind. Holmes, still, in partial disguise as a tradesman, led the way, his stick tapping a rhythm on the cobbles. Inside, the taproom was dim, filled with the low murmur of sailors and dockhands. Holmes approached the barman, a burly man with a scarred cheek, and slid a shilling across the counter. Viktor Krause, where is he? The barman pocketed the coin, his eyes wary. Upstairs, room 3. But he's a queer one, keeps 2. Himself mutters in foreign tongues. We ascended a creaking staircase, the air growing colder and damper with each step. At room 3, Holmes knocked sharply, his hand on his revolver. A voice, heavy with a Prussian accent, called out, "Were iced da." "Friends of the Guild," Holmes replied, his voice low and authoritative. "We must speak of the watch." The door opened a crack, revealing Krause's gaunt face, his eyes sunken and suspicious. He was a tall man, perhaps 40, with a scholar's stoop and fingers stained with ink and oil. "You are Holmes," he said, his voice a mix of fear and defiance. "I know you're meddling. Enter, but no, I am armed." We stepped into a squalid room, its single window overlooking the docks. A table held papers, tools, and a half-assembled mechanism, a larger version of Hargrove's rotor device. Holmes's gaze locked on it, but he addressed Krause with calm precision. "You are VK, recipient of Ashford's payments. Hargrove's watch, your design, was meant for Berlin. Why did he die?" Krause sank onto a chair, his hands trembling. "You know too much, Holmes, but I will speak, for I am no murderer. Hargrove was my friend, my collaborator. We designed the cipher watch together, a marvel, capable of encoding messages in seconds. Ashford commissioned it for delicate matters, state secrets to be shared with allies. But Hargrove grew uneasy, spoke of betrayal. He hid the watch, left clues, the ledger, the coordinates. I warned him to stay silent, but I did not kill him." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Then who did? The woman in green, or Ashford himself?" Krause shook his head, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I know not her name, but she is Ashford's creature, his eyes and ears. She was at the Guild, watching, always watching. Hargrove feared her most. As for Ashford, he is ruthless, but careful. The noose was another's hand, though he may have ordered it." Holmes produced the ledger page. "This names you £10,000 for silence. What affair?" Krause paled. "Not blackmail payment for the device. Berlin demanded it, and Ashford paid through Hargrove's accounts to conceal his role. I am but a scientist, Holmes, exiled, and desperate. I meant no harm." Holmes stepped closer, his voice like steel. "The suicide note forged left-handed. Silas Crane's work." Krause nodded reluctantly. "Crane, yes. A Guild forger, skilled in deception. But I swear, I did not touch Hargrove. I fled when I heard of his death, fearing I'd be next. Holmes examined Krause's hands calloused, but no rope burns, no signs of violence. You speak truth, perhaps, but the watch, where is it? Krause's eyes darted to the window. Hidden, as Hargrove wished, I know not where. He spoke of the pendulum, of east perhaps, a church, a tower. He trusted no one, not even me. Before Holmes could press further, a creak sounded on the stairs. Krause lunged for the window, scrambling onto the fire escape. Holmes pursued, but a shout from below, a woman's voice, sharp and commanding, halted us. A figure in a green cloak stood in the alley, pistol raised. Leave him, Holmes, she called, her face veiled by shadow. A shot rang out, splintering the window frame, and Krause vanished into the fog. We ducked back inside, the barman shouting below as patrons scattered. Holmes cursed softly. She guards him like a hawk, but her voice cultured English, not foreign. A lady of means, Watson, and dangerous. We returned to Baker Street, the trail momentarily cold. Holmes spread the evidence before the fire, his pipe sending up clouds of smoke. Krause is no killer, but he knows more than he says. The woman protects him, more controls him. Crane forged the note, but the murder itself chloral hydrate, a blow, a noose required strength and precision. I frowned, nursing a brandy. Ashford, then? Or this woman? Holmes tapped the ledger. Ashford pulls the strings, but the woman is his blade. Her identity is our next step. The Guild's cipher device, the payments to Berlin Hargrove, uncovered a treasonous plot, and they silenced him. But the watch remains, hidden, its gears holding the final truth. As night fell, Holmes donned his disguise once more. I go to the docks again, he said. The woman's trail begins there. Stay here, Watson, and keep your revolver close. The pendulum swings, and we are not yet out of danger. The watch, locked in its strongbox, seemed to pulse with Hargrove's. Warning, its secrets a beacon in the dark, drawing us ever deeper into a conspiracy that threatened to shake the foundations of empire. Chapter 8. The false suicide note. The morning after our fraught encounter at the Black Anchor. London awoke to a sky bruised with storm clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I found Sherlock Holmes in our Baker Street rooms, seated at his chemical table, the watchmaker's pocket watch open before him, its gears glinting under the lamplight like the facets of a dark jewel. The ledger page from Hyde Park, the brass gear, the glass shard, the burnt fragment, and Hargrove's notebook formed a grim tableau, each item a piece of a puzzle that grew more intricate with every step. Holmes's face was pale, his eyes narrowed, with the intensity of a man who saw the threads of conspiracy weaving tighter, yet still eluded the final knot. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice sharp despite the evident toll of another sleepless night. "Your hand, I observe, is healing less stiffness in your grip today. We must return to Scotland Yard. The suicide note is our pivot. Its falsity is certain, but its maker remains a shadow." I flexed my bandaged hand, the scrape from Whitechapel. Now a dull ache. "You suspect Silas Crane, the forger from the Guild meeting. But how to prove it?" Holmes tapped the burnt fragment, bearing the Guild's cogwheel and serpent symbol. Crane's left-handed scrawl matches the note's smudge. But we need his confession or evidence tying him to the scene. Krause's tale, though self-serving, clears him of the murder itself. The woman in green, however, grows ever more central. Her shot at the tavern was no warning, she meant to kill. We breakfasted hastily, Holmes barely touching his coffee, his mind already racing ahead. The cab ride to Scotland Yard was silent, the city's clamour muted by the gathering storm. Inspector Lestrade greeted us in his cluttered office, his expression a familiar blend of irritation and reluctant curiosity. "Holmes, you're back," he sighed, tossing a file onto his desk. "This Hargrove case is a dead end. The note, the rope, the locked room suicide, plain and simple. What more do you want?" Holmes's smile was thin and dangerous. "The truth, Lestrade. The note is a forgery, and you know it." "Show it to me again." Lestrade retrieved the crumpled sheet. From the file, its words stark in Hargrove's script. "I can bear the shame no longer. Forgive me." Holmes examined it through his lens, his fingers tracing the ink's flow. "As I said, the smudge is left with Hargrove was right-handed. The paper, German, from a Berlin mill, is not a stock he used. And note the pressure of the pen uneven, as if written under duress, or by a hand mimicking his style." Lestrade folded his arms, unconvinced. "And who's this forger, then? Some phantom of your imagination?" "No phantom," Holmes replied. "Silas Crane, a known guild member, skilled in counterfeiting documents. His left-handed script matches this smudge. But there's more chloral hydrate in Hargrove's stomach, a blow to the skull. He was drugged and struck before the noose, a murder staged as despair." Lestrade's skepticism wavered, his eyes flicking to the note. "Crane, eh? We've had him in for petty frauds, passports, bonds. But murder, that's a stretch, Holmes." "Then let us stretch further," Holmes said, rising. "Hargrove's effect, show me the rest." In a dusty storeroom, Lestrade produced a box containing Hargrove's belongings: a pipe, a pocket knife, a watchmaker's loop, and a small leather case. Holmes opened the case, revealing a set of engraving tools, one conspicuously missing. Thorne mentioned a tool Hargrove favoured for inscriptions. He murmured, "Stolen, perhaps, to etch the watch's message, the secret lies in the gears." He turned to the notebook, flipping to a page of chemical notations. Hargrove was experimenting with ink's mercury fulminate, as in the watch's vial, not for detonation, but to create a reactive compound, perhaps to destroy evidence if discovered. The glass shard from the workshop, likely from a vial of this mixture, broken in haste. Lestrade scratched his chin. "You're building castles in the air, Holmes. Where's your proof?" Holmes held up the notebook. "Here. Hargrove's sketches show a cipher rotor, designed for Ashford, funded by payments to Viktor Krause. The ledger from Hyde Park confirms transactions to Berlin. This was no suicide, Lestrade. It was a silencing to protect. A treasonous plot." Reluctantly, Lestrade agreed to summon Crane for questioning, though he warned us the guild's influence reached high places. "Tread carefully, Holmes. Ashford's a peer, and Berlin's a diplomatic minefield." Back at Baker Street, Holmes spread the evidence before the fire, his pipe sending up clouds of smoke. Crane forged the note, but the murder required another hand, someone strong enough to lift Hargrove's body, someone with access to chloral hydrate. The woman in green, Watson, she is no mere accomplice. Her cultured voice, her precision, her green cloak of fine weave. She is a lady, perhaps close to Ashford. I frowned, sipping a brandy to steady my nerves. "A lover, a spy, both perhaps," Holmes said. "Her role at the tavern suggests loyalty to Krause, yet Ashford's command at the guild implies she serves him. A triangle of motives: greed, betrayal, or ideology." A knock interrupted Usbilly, the page boy, with a message from Holmes's Billingsgate informant. Crane's been seen at a printer's shop in Shoreditch, working late, Billy reported. And a woman in a green cloak was with him, delivering papers. Holmes's eyes gleamed. The forger and the assassin, together. Tonight, Watson, we visit Shoreditch. Bring your revolver. The game grows deadly. Under cover of darkness, we took a hansom to a narrow street in Shoreditch, where a small printing press operated behind shuttered windows. Holmes, disguised as a newsagent, gained entry by claiming a delivery error, while I stood watch outside. Through a crack in the shutters, I glimpsed Crane, his scarred jaw unmistakable, hunched over a press, inking a document. Beside him stood a woman tall, dark-haired, her green cloak draped over a chair. Her face, briefly illuminated, was striking, with sharp features and eyes that held a cold resolve. Holmes emerged moments later, his expression grim. Crane is forging passports. German, bound for Berlin. The woman, she is no mere courier. She gave him a ciphered message, likely from Ashford. We must follow her. We trailed her through the rain-slicked streets, her cloak a beacon in the gloom. She led us to a lodging house near Spitalfields, slipping inside before we could close. The distance. Holmes paused, noting the address. Tomorrow, Watson, we learn her identity. For now, we return to Baker Street. The note's forgery is confirmed, but the killer's hand remains elusive. As we sat by the fire, the watch in its strongbox seemed to tick louder, its gears whispering Hargrove's warning. The pendulum swung east, toward a truth that promised danger and revelation in equal measure. Chapter 9. The Woman in Green. The morning after our nocturnal pursuit in Shoreditch. London lay under a pall of drizzle, the rain tapping a relentless rhythm against the windows of 2-1B Baker Street. I found Sherlock Holmes by the fire, his lean frame hunched over the watchmaker's pocket watch, its components meticulously reassembled, though the strongbox stood open beside it, a silent sentinel. The ledger page, brass gear, glass shard, burnt fragment, and Hargrove's notebook were arranged before him, each a mute witness to the conspiracy we unraveled. Holmes's eyes, shadowed from sleeplessness, burned with a feverish intensity, and his fingers twitched as if itching to seize the next clue. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice low but charged with purpose. "Your brandy glass, I observe, was untouched last night, a sign of nerves steadied by resolve. Today we pursue the woman in green. Her lodging in Spitalfields holds the key to this affair, and I suspect she is more than Ashford's blade or Krause's ally. I rubbed my healing hand, the Shoreditch chase a faint ache now. You believe she's the killer? Her shot in Hyde Park was precise, and her presence with Crane suggests deeper involvement." Holmes nodded, lighting his pipe with a spill from the fire. "She is no mere pawn. Her cultured voice, her fine cloak, her command at the tavern point to a woman of station, perhaps bound to Ashford by more than loyalty. The cipher watch, the forged note, the Berlin connection, her hand weaves through them all. We must learn her name and motive." We breakfasted sparingly, Holmes's appetite as absent as ever, and set out for Spitalfields in a hansom, the rain cloaking the city in a grey veil. The lodging house, a narrow brick building wedged between a pub and a gin shop, bore the marks of faded gentility peeling paint, cracked windows, yet a brass knocker polished to a gleam. Holmes, disguised as a rent collector, rapped sharply while I stood back, my revolver a reassuring weight in my coat. The door creaked open, revealing a landlady with a face like weathered oak. "What's your business?" she demanded, eyeing Holmes's forged ledger. "A matter of accounts," Madame Holmes said smoothly. "We seek a tenenta lady, dark-haired, fond of a green cloak." The landlady's eyes narrowed, but a half-crown loosened her tongue. "Miss Eleanor Vane, top floor, room 6, keeps odd hours, that one, and pays in gold. But she's out. Now left at dawn." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "Her effects, may we inspect them? A routine matter." Grumbling, the landlady led us up a creaking staircase to a sparse but tidy room. A green cloak hung on a peg, its weave matching the thread from Hyde Park. A writing desk held papers, letters in a flowing script, one bearing the guild's cogwheel and serpent symbol. Holmes scanned them swiftly, his fingers pausing on a note addressed to my lord. "The watch is secure," but Holmes closes in. "We must act swiftly, or Berlin will falter." "Eleanor Vane," Holmes murmured, pocketing the note. "Ashford's confidant, perhaps his paramour." Her hand penned. "This, but the cipher watchware, is it?" A search revealed little more a vial of chloral hydrate, its label faded, and a small pistol, its barrel etched with a delicate floral pattern. "Her weapon," I said, recalling the Hyde Park shot. "She's no stranger to violence." Holmes nodded, his eyes distant. "And the chloral hydrate ties her to Hargrove's murder. She drugged him, perhaps with Crane's aid, then staged the hanging. But the watch, she guards it, or seeks it." We left the lodging house, the landlady none the wiser, and returned to Baker Street to regroup. Holmes spread the new note beside the others, his pipe smoke curling like a question mark. "Eleanor Vane," he said, "a name known in society. Gentry, widowed young, rumoured to have ties to diplomatic circles. Her presence in Spitalfields is a masquerade, her green cloak a signal to her allies." I frowned, sipping tea to calm my racing thoughts. "Then she's a spy, for Berlin, through Ashford." "Or a double agent," Holmes replied. "Her loyalty to Ashford is clear, but her motives blur. The Guild's cipher device, meant for Berlin, threatens British interests. Hargrove's rebellion hiding, the watch forced her hand. She killed to protect the plot, but the watch eludes her still." A telegram arrived from Wiggins, leader of Holmes's street urchins. "Woman in green seen at Ashford's Kensington house, entering by side gate, carried a small case." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The watch, Watson, or a decoy? We must confront her, but on our terms." That evening, we donned disguises, Holmes as a telegraph boy, I as a cabby, and took a hansom to Kensington. Ashford's mansion loomed dark against the rain-soaked sky, its windows aglow with gaslight. We circled to the side gate, where Holmes's lockpicks made short work of the latch. The garden was a maze of wet shrubs, but a faint light from a study window drew us near. Through the glass, we saw Eleanor Vane, her green cloak discarded, standing with Ashford. Her voice, sharp and urgent, carried faintly. "The watch is lost, my lord. Hargrove hid it too well. Holmes must not find it." Ashford's reply was cold. "Then eliminate him, Eleanor. Your failure in the park was costly." She drew a pistol, the same floral-etched weapon, her face a mask of resolve. "I will not fail again." Holmes signalled retreat, and we slipped back into the night, the rain masking our steps. At Baker Street, he paced, his mind a whirlwind. "Eleanor Vane is our killer," he said. "She drugged Hargrove, struck him, and hanged him, with Crane forging the note to seal the deception. Ashford directs her, but the watch its hiding place is our final challenge. I gripped my revolver, the weight grounding me. Then we set a trap, lure her out. Holmes nodded, a grim smile playing on his lips. Precisely tomorrow. We spread word through my informants that the watch is found hidden in St. Paul's, east of the city, where the pendulum swings. She will come, and we will have her. As I retired, the strongbox's lock clicked shut, the watch within ticking like a heartbeat, its secrets poised to unravel a treasonous web that stretched from London to Berlin. Chapter 10. The pendulums swing the morning after our clandestine visit to Ashford's mansion. London stirred under a sky of fractured clouds, the rain relenting to a damp chill that clung to the stones of Baker Street. I awoke to find Sherlock Holmes already at work, his lean figure bent over a map of the city, the watchmaker's pocket watch resting beside it, freed from its strongbox. The ledger page, brass gear, glass shard, burnt fragment, Hargrove's notebook, and Eleanor Vane's note formed a grim array on the table, each a thread in the tapestry of conspiracy we sought to unravel. Holmes's eyes, though shadowed by exhaustion, gleamed with the fierce clarity of a man nearing the end of a hunt. "Good morning, Watson," he said, not looking up from the map. "Your sleep was restless. I observe your boots, scuffed anew, suggest pacing in the night. Today, we set our trap. St. Paul's Cathedral, east of the city, where the great pendulum clock once stood, is our stage. Eleanor Vane will come, drawn by whispers of the watch's discovery." I rubbed my eyes, the weight of my revolver in my coat pocket a constant reminder of the danger ahead. "You're certain she'll take the bait? She's cunning. Holmes and Ashford's influence protects her." Holmes's smile was a blade's edge. "Cunning, yes, but desperate. The cipher watch is her prize, and she cannot risk its loss. My informants, Wiggins, the fishmonger, the jeweller, have spread the rumour through Whitechapel and the docks. By noon, she will hear of it. We must be ready." We breakfasted sparingly, Holmes sketching a plan of St. Paul's in his notebook, marking the whispering gallery and the crypt below. "The cathedral's vastness is our ally," he said. "We'll position Lestrade's men at the entrances, disguised as You and I will take the gallery, where sound carries secrets. If Vane comes, she'll bring the watch or seek it." By 11, we were at St. Paul's, the cathedral's dome a sombre silhouette against the grey sky. Lestrade reluctantly persuaded. By Holmes's evidence, had stationed plainclothes officers at the doors, their faces grim with the weight of a case now undeniably murderous. We ascended the winding stairs to the whispering gallery, the vast dome above us echoing with the murmurs of tourists. Holmes's eyes scanned the crowd, his disguise a cleric's, cassock lending him an air of quiet authority. I, in a workman's cap and coat, kept my revolver close, my bandaged hand steady despite the ache. At 12:30, a figure in a green cloak appeared below, moving with purpose toward the crypt stairs. Eleanor Vane's dark hair was tucked beneath a hood, but her graceful stride betrayed her. Holmes nudged me, his whisper low. "She's alone, but armed. Follow, but keep to the shadows." We descended, the crypt's cool air heavy with the scent of stone and wax. Vane paused at a memorial plaque, her fingers probing its edges as if seeking a hidden catch. Holmes stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Miss Vane, the game is up. The watch is not here, but your crimes are laid bare." She spun, her pistol flashing in the dim light, but Holmes was faster, his stick knocking the weapon from her hand. It clattered to the floor, and I seized it, my revolver. Trained on her, her eyes, cold and defiant, met Holmes's without fear. "You're too late, Holmes," she said, her voice cultured yet venomous. "The watch is beyond your reach, and Ashford's will shall prevail." Holmes's gaze was unyielding. "You murdered Hargrove, drugged him with chloral hydrate, struck him, hanged him. Silas Crane forged the note, but you tied the noose. Why?" Vane's lips curled in a bitter smile. "Hargrove was a fool, meddling in affairs beyond his craft. The cipher watch was to secure Britain's secrets for Berlin Ashford's vision, not mine. I acted to protect it, and him. Protect." I interjected, my anger rising. "You killed a man to hide treason." "Treason," she spat. "Diplomacy, Doctor. The Guild's work transcends borders. Hargrove's conscience threatened everything." Holmes stepped closer, his voice like steel. "Where is the watch?" "Hargrove hid it, and you've failed to find it." Her eyes flickered, a crack in her resolve. "East," as he wrote. "A church, a tower, I know not where." He trusted no one, not even me. Before she could say more, a shout echoed from the crypt's entrance. Lestrade's men surged in, restraining Vane as she struggled, her cloak falling, to reveal a locket with the Guild's symbol. Holmes seized it, clicking it open to find a tiny gear identical to the one from Hargrove's workshop. "A token," he murmured, "or a key." Vane was led away, her defiance unbroken as Holmes, and I returned to Baker Street. Lestrade promised to hold her, though he warned that Ashford's influence might secure her release. In our rooms, Holmes examined the locket's gear, fitting it into the watch's mechanism. A faint click sounded, and a hidden panel sprang open, revealing a second slip of paper. "St. Botolph's Old Gate, East Tower, 3:17. "The pendulum swings east," Holmes said, his eyes alight. "St. Botolph's, a church in the East End. Hargrove's final hiding place, timed to the watch's arrest. We go at dawn, Watson, before Ashford acts." That night, as rain resumed its patter, Holmes pored over maps of Aldgate, his mind a whirlwind of deduction. Vane killed to silence Hargrove, but Ashford's treason runs deeper. The watch holds a cipher, perhaps a codebook's key, vital to Berlin spies. We must secure it before they do. I gripped my revolver, the weight a steady anchor, and Ashford, Krause, Crane. Holmes's smile was grim. Crane will crack under Lestrade's questioning. Krause is a pawn, fleeing or hiding. Ashford is our true foe, but the watch will bring him down. Tomorrow, Watson, the pendulum swings, and we shall see where it falls. The watch, now ticking softly on the table, seemed to pulse with Hargrove's final act of defiance, its gears turning toward a truth that could shake empires. Chapter 11. The Tower's Secret. The dawn broke over London with a brittle clarity, the clouds parting to reveal a sky of pale blue that did little to warm the chill seeping through the streets of Baker Street. I awoke to find Sherlock Holmes, already dressed, his Inverness cape draped over his shoulders, the watchmaker's pocket watch clutched in his hand, its ticking a faint echo in the quiet room. The ledger page, brass gear, glass shard, burnt fragment, Hargrove's notebook, Eleanor Vane's note, and the locket's tiny gear lay arranged on the table, a constellation of evidence pointing to the final act of our pursuit. Holmes's face was gaunt, his eyes alight with the fierce determination of a man who sensed the climax of a deadly game. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice taut as a bowstring. Your revolver, I trust, is loaded. St. Botolph's old gate awaits us. The East Tower, at 3:17, holds Hargrove's cipher watch, the key to Ashford's treason. We must move swiftly, for Eleanor Vane's arrest will have stirred the guild. Checked my revolver, its weight a steady comfort against the unease knotting my stomach. You expect Ashford himself, or Krause? Holmes tucked the watch into his waistcoat, his lips a thin line. Ashford is too cautious to show his hand, but Krause may be desperate enough to seek the watch. The guild's agents perhaps even. A new player will be watching. The pendulum swings, Watson, and we must be its balance. We took a hansom through the waking city. The East End's grime and clamour a stark contrast to Kensington's polish. St. Botolph's, a weathered church of grey stone, stood amid Aldgate's bustle, its tower a squat sentinel overlooking narrow alleys. The clock face, high above, read 10 minutes to 3, its hands creeping toward the hour. Hargrove's watch had frozen. We slipped through a side door, the air inside heavy with the scent of old wood and candle wax. The tower stairs were narrow and worn, spiraling up into shadow. Holmes led, his lantern casting flickering beams across damp stone walls etched with faint traces of the guild's cogwheel serpent symbol. At the top, a small chamber housed the clock's mechanism, its gears silent but for a faint hum. A wooden panel, marked with a scratched 3:17, caught Holmes's eye. He pressed it, and with a soft click, it slid aside, revealing a hollow niche. Inside lay the cipher watch, not the prototype we held, but another, larger and more intricate. Its case engraved with the guild's symbol and the words "The secret lies in the gears." Holmes lifted it, his fingers tracing its contours. "Hargrove's masterpiece," he murmured. "A cipher device, capable of encoding entire dispatches. This is what Ashford sought for Berlin." Before I could respond, a shadow moved in the doorway. Viktor Krause emerged, his gaunt frame trembling, a revolver in his hand. "Holmes," he rasped, his Prussian accent thick with desperation. "Give me the watch. It is my only salvation." Holmes's eyes narrowed, his hand steady. "You're too late, Krause. Vane is in custody, crane exposed. The watch condemns you and Ashford." Krause's grip tightened, his voice breaking. "I am no traitor. Hargrove and I built it for science, not treason. Ashford twisted our work, and Hargrove died for it. Give me the watch, and I vanish. Berlin will never have it." I raised my revolver, my voice firm. "Drop the gun, Krause. You're no killer, but we won't hesitate." A creak on the stairs froze us all. Lord Ashford stepped into the light, his florid face pale but composed, a pistol gleaming in his gloved hand. "Well played, Holmes," he said, his tone icy. "But the watch is mine. Krause, stand aside." Krause hesitated, his eyes darting between us. Holmes seized the moment, lunging forward, his stick striking Ashford's wrist. The pistol fired, the bullet embedding in the ceiling as plaster rained down. I tackled Krause, wrestling his gun free, while Holmes pinned Ashford against the wall, the cipher watch still in his grasp. "You're finished, Ashford," Holmes said, his voice like steel. "Hargrove's Clues' notebook, the ledger. The watch expose your treason. The guild's plot ends here." Ashford laughed, a hollow sound. "You think me alone? The guild's reach is vast, Holmes. You've won a skirmish, not the war." Before he could say more, Lestrade's men, alerted by our prearranged signal, stormed the tower, their boots echoing on the stairs. Ashford and Krause were restrained, the cipher watch secured in Holmes's pocket. As they were led away, eyes burned with defiance, while Krause's head hung low, his dreams of redemption shattered back at Baker Street. Holmes laid the cipher watch beside its prototype, its gears glinting in the firelight. "A marvel," he said, "but a dangerous one." Hargrove hid it to thwart Ashford's plan, a codebook key meant to unlock British secrets for Berlin. Vane killed to protect it, Crane forged to conceal it, but Hargrove's conscience prevailed. I poured a brandy, my hands still trembling, from the tower's chaos, and the guild, will they strike again? Holmes lit his pipe, his gaze distant. The guild endures, Watson, its roots deep in London's shadows. But for now, we've broken their machine. The watch goes to Mycroft, for safekeeping in Whitehall's vaults. Ashford faces trial, Vane imprisonment, and Krause, perhaps exile, if he speaks. As night fell, the rain returned, a soft patter against the windows. The watch ticked on, its secrets now ours, a testament to Hargrove's sacrifice and Holmes's relentless pursuit of truth. The pendulum had swung, and for now it rested in our favor. Chapter 12. The Gears of Justice. The morning after our triumph at St. Botolph's. London lay under a sky of restless clouds, their edges tinged with the gold of a tentative sun. I awoke in our Baker Street rooms to find Sherlock Holmes at his desk, the cipher watch and its prototype before him, their gears silent but gleaming with the weight of the secrets they had unlocked. The ledger page, brass gear, glass shard, burnt fragment, Hargrove's notebook, Eleanor Vane's note, and the locket's tiny gear were carefully packed into a leather case, ready for delivery to Mycroft Holmes at Whitehall. Holmes's face, though etched with the strain of our ordeal, bore a rare satisfaction, the look of a man who had brought order to chaos. "Good morning, Watson," he said, his voice steady but tinged with weariness. "Your color is improved, sleep has restored you. Today, we conclude our affair. Mycroft awaits the watch, and Lestrade reports progress with our prisoners. The gears of justice turn, albeit slowly." I rubbed my bandaged hand, the ache now a faint memory. Ashford and Vane will, they confess, and Krause, he seemed more pawn than mastermind. Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like a final. Question: Ashford is a fortress, his arrogance a shield, but Vane may crack under pressure. Krause, I suspect, will trade secrets for leniency. The watch is our trump card, its ciphers will expose the guild's dealings with Berlin. We set out for Whitehall in a hansom, the city bustling with the energy of a new day. Mycroft Holmes received us in a sparse office, his bulk filling the room, his eyes cold but keen. He examined the cipher watch with a scientist's precision, turning it over in his plump hands. "A remarkable device," he said, his voice low. "Hargrove's genius could have tipped the balance of power. You've done well, Sherlock, though I trust you've left no loose ends." Holmes's gaze was unflinching. "The watch's secrets are secure, Mycroft. The codebook key within a to Hargrove's rotors will decrypt Berlin's dispatches. Ashford's treason is laid bare, and the guild's inner circle is broken." Mycroft nodded, placing the watch in a steel box. "The government will handle the rest. Ashford's trial will be discreet, diplomacy demands it. Vane and Krause will face justice, though the guild's shadow lingers." Back at Scotland Yard, Lestrade greeted us with a grudging nod, his office cluttered with files on the Hargrove case. "Crane's singing like a canary," he said, tossing a report across the desk. "Admits to forging the suicide note. Says Vane supplied the German paper and ordered the job. She's tight-lipped, but we've got her for murder chloral hydrate. The blow, the noose. Ashford's denying everything, but the ledger and watch tie him to Berlin. Holmes scanned the report, his expression unreadable. And Krause, talking, Lestrade said. Claims he was coerced by Ashford. Says the cipher watch was meant for a Prussian contact, a diplomat named von Richter. He's begging for exile over the gallows. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Von Richter a name to watch. The guild's tentacles reach far, Lestrade. Keep Crane under lock. He's a flight risk. We returned to Baker Street as dusk fell, the city settling into a quiet hum. Holmes spread Hargrove's notebook before the fire, its final pages revealing a cipher to Bowler key to the watch's rotor settings. Hargrove's legacy, he said, tracing the lines. He encoded a warning in the watch, knowing it would outlive him. His death was no suicide, but a sacrifice to expose the truth. I poured a brandy, my thoughts heavy with the cost of our victory. The guild will, they regroup. Ashford spoke of a larger network. Holmes exhaled a cloud of smoke, his gaze distant. They are wounded, Watson, but not dead. The Horologists Guild thrives in secrecy, its members scattered across continents. We've dismantled their machine, but others will rise. For now, we rest. That evening, a telegram arrived from Mycroft. Watch secured. Berlin dispatches intercepted. Guild's Prussian cell disrupted. Well done. Holmes read it with a faint smile, then tossed it into the fire. The game is never truly over, Watson, he said, but this round is ours. As I retired, the rain returned, a soft patter against the windows, a counterpoint to the silence of the cipher watch, now in Whitehall's vaults. Hargrove's sacrifice had borne fruit, his clues guiding us through a labyrinth of treason to a truth that safeguarded a nation. The pendulum had swung, and for now it hung still, its secrets locked in the gears of justice. Chapter 13. The echoes of the Guilder days following our victory at St. Botolph's brought a rare calm to 2-1B Baker Street, though the air held the weight of unfinished business. London basked in a fleeting autumn warmth, the sun casting long shadows through our windows. Where the fire burned low, its embers a quiet reminder of the storm we had weathered. The leather case that had held Hargrove's clues, the ledger page, brass gear, glass shard, burnt fragment, notebook, Eleanor Vane's note, and the locket's gear now sat empty on the shelf, its contents delivered to Mycroft's safekeeping. The cipher watch, both prototype and masterwork, rested in Whitehall's vaults, its secrets locked away, yet Sherlock Holmes's restless pacing betrayed a mind unready to close the case. "Good morning, Watson," he said, pausing by the window, his silhouette sharp against the golden light. "Your stride is lighter today. Our triumph has eased your wounds, I see, but the Horologists Guild lingers, a shadow beyond our grasp. Ashford's trial looms, Vane's silence holds, and Krause's confessions raise new questions. We must tread lightly, for the game is not yet done." I sipped my tea, the memory of the tower's chaos still vivid. "You suspect more players. Von Richter, perhaps the Prussian diplomat Krause named." Holmes nodded, lighting his pipe with a spill from the fire. "Von Richter is a ghost, mentioned in whispers but absent from official records. Mycroft's intercepts confirm Berlin's interest in the cipher watch, but the Guild's network stretches further, Vienna perhaps, or St. Petersburg. Hargrove's death was a spark. The fire still smolders." A knock interrupted us, Mrs. Hudson, with a letter bearing the seal of Scotland Yard. Holmes tore it open, his eyes scanning the terse lines. "Lestrade," he said, his voice sharp. "Crane has vanished from Custodia. Bribed guard, a midnight escape. He left a note, the guild endures. Vane remains silent, but Ashford's counsel demands her release, citing lack of evidence beyond the watch." I frowned, setting my cup down. Crane's escape, does it mean the guild is regrouping? And Vane, could she walk free? Holmes's gaze darkened. Crane is a minnow, fleeing to his masters. Vane is the greater threat. Her loyalty to Ashford is unshaken, and her skills poisoned pistol, guile make her dangerous, but the note suggests a new move. We must act before the guild strikes. He donned his coat, his movements brisk. "To the yard, Watson. Lestrade's incompetence demands our presence." At Scotland Yard, Lestrade's office was a storm of papers, his face flushed with frustration. "Holmes, you've stirred a hornet's nest," he growled. "Crane's gone, slipped through a back gate last night. We've men scouring the docks. But he's likely halfway to Dover, and Ashford's lawyers blast them are, claiming the ledger's inadmissible. Forged or some such rot." Holmes's eyes glinted like steel. "The ledger is Hargrove's, authenticated by his ink and hand. Vane's chloral hydrate vial, her pistol. The watch's ciphers. Your case is ironclad, Lestrade, if you'd use it. Where was Crane last?" "Seen, a tavern near Limehouse," Lestrade said, tossing a report across the desk. "Witness saw him with a man foreign, bearded, spoke with an accent. Could be your Von Richter." Holmes seized the report, his fingers tracing the witnesses. Description: Limehouse, where the guild's lesser agents gather. We go tonight, Watson, in disguise. Crane's trail may lead to Von Richter and the guild's next move. That evening, we ventured into Limehouse, the air thick with coal smoke and the tang of the river. Holmes, disguised as a dock worker, his face smudged with soot, led the way to a ramshackle tavern, its windows dim with grime. I followed, my revolver concealed beneath a tattered coat, my senses alert to the shadows that seemed to watch from every alley dot inside. The tavern was a haze of tobacco and cheap gin. Holmes's eyes scanned the crowd, settling on a corner table, where a bearded man, broad-shouldered, with a scar across his brows, broke in low tones to a nervous figure. Crane, Holmes whispered, nodding toward the smaller man, his scar faintly visible in the lamplight. We edged closer, catching fragments of their talk. Double quotes, ... "The watch is lost," Crane muttered, his voice trembling. "But the guild has another hidden in Vienna. Von Richter, you must." The bearded man cut him off, his accent clipped and Germanic silence. "Fool, Holmes is near. We move tonight to the warehouse." Holmes signaled retreat, and we slipped out, trailing them through Limehouse's maze to a derelict warehouse by the docks. The bearded man, Von Richter, surely unlocked a side door, craned at his heels. Holmes's lockpicks made quick work of the latch, and we entered a cavernous space, lit by a single lantern. Crates lined the walls, marked with the guild's symbol, and at the center stood a table with a new cipher device, larger, more complex than Hargrove's watch, its rotors gleaming. Before we could act, a blade flashed in the dark. Von Richter lunged, his knife grazing Holmes's arm as I fired a warning shot, the echo deafening in the warehouse. Crane bolted, but Holmes tackled Von Richter, pinning him as I covered the door. "The guild's plans, Von Richter," Holmes demanded. "Speak, or face the gallows." The Prussian spat, his eyes defiant. "You've won nothing, Holmes. The Guild's work continues. Vienna, Moscow, beyond. The cipher lives." Lestrade's men, alerted by my shot, stormed the warehouse, restraining von Richter as Crane was caught in the yard. Back at Baker Street, Holmes bandaged his arm, his expression grim but triumphant. "The Guild's reach is vast," he said, "but we've struck another blow. This new device goes to Mycroft, and von Richter's capture will shake Berlin's confidence." I poured a brandy, the night's tension lingering, and Vane. Ashford Holmes exhaled a cloud of smoke. Vane will face trial, her silence broken by Crane's confession. Ashford's influence wanes, but the Guild endures. Hargrove's watch was but one gear in their machine. As I retired, the city's hum was a distant pulse, the rain a soft echo of the storm we had quelled. The cipher watch, safe in Whitehall, had unraveled a treasonous web, but the Guild's shadows stretched far, its gears turning in silence, waiting for the next move in a game without end. Chapter 14. Shadows beyond the gears. The morning after our perilous encounter in Limehouse. London woke to a sky heavy with the threat of rain, its grey veil muting the city's clamour. In our Baker Street rooms, the fire burned low, casting flickering shadows across the now empty table where Hargrove's clues had once lain. The cipher watch, its prototype, and the new device from the warehouse were secure in Mycroft's hands. Their secrets poised to disrupt the Horologists Guild's far-reaching plans. Yet Sherlock Holmes stood by the window, his silhouette taut, his pipe unlit, his eyes fixed on some unseen horizon. The case was closed, but his restless mind suggested otherwise. "Good morning, Watson," he said, turning with a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. "Your posture betrays unused. Your shoulders are tense despite our victory. The Guild's shadow lingers, does it not? Von Richter's capture and Crane's confession have wounded them, but their roots run deep. We must anticipate their next move." I poured coffee, the aroma grounding me against the weight of his words. Von Richter spoke of Vienna and Moscow. "Do you think the Guild will strike from abroad?" Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like a question unresolved. "The Guild is a hydra. Watson, cut one head, and others grow." Hargrove's watch was but a single cog in their machine. Von Richter's device, more advanced, suggests they've refined Hargrove's design. Mycroft's intercepts will slow them, but we must seek their heart perhaps in Vienna, where Crane hinted another cipher lies. A knock interrupted us, Mrs. Hudson, with a telegram bearing the seal of Whitehall. Holmes tore it open, his eyes scanning the terse lines. "Mycroft," he said, his voice sharp. "Von Richter escaped en route to Holding. Guild agents suspected. Vienna lead confirmed. Proceed with caution." His fingers tightened on the paper. "The game accelerates, Watson. Von Richter. Flight confirms the Guild's desperation. We must follow the trail to Vienna, but first we secure London's loose ends." We set out for Scotland Yard, where Lestrade greeted us with a scowl. His office a chaos of reports and half-empty coffee cups. "Holmes, you've stirred a hornet's nest," he growled. Von Richter slipped his cuffs during transport guards found drugged. Chloral hydrate again. Vane still silent, but Ashford's trial is set for next week. His lawyers are screaming diplomatic immunity. Holmes's gaze was icy. Von Richter's escape bears Vane's signature, her methods, her audacity. She's orchestrating. From her cell, Lestrade, search her quarters again. She's passing messages. Lestrade bristled but nodded. We're watching her like hawks. But Crane's talking more says, the guild has a safe house in Vienna, near the Stephansdom, where they're building another cipher machine. He swears he's done with them, fears for his life. Holmes seized a map of Europe from Lestrade's desk, his finger tracing Vienna's outline. The Stephansdomer Cathedral, like St. Botolph's. The guild favors sacred places for their secrecy. We depart tomorrow, Watson, on the evening train. Mycroft will arrange papers. That afternoon, Holmes dispatched Wiggins and his urchins to scour London's docks for signs of von Richter, while we prepared for the journey. In our rooms, Holmes packed a small case lockpicks, revolver, and Hargrove's notebook, its cipher table, a guide for what lay ahead. The guild's new device, he said, is likely a scaled-up version of Hargrove's rotors, capable of encrypting entire codebooks. If Vienna holds it, we must seize it before it reaches Moscow or beyond. I checked my revolver, its weight, a familiar anchor, and Vane. If she's directing von Richter from prison, Holmes's smile was grim. She's a spider, Watson, her web intact despite her cage. Lestrade must tighten her chains, or she slipped free like Crane. As dusk fell, we received a second telegram from Mycroft. Vienna safe house confirmed Stephansplatz 7, Guild. Contact, the clockmaker, oversees operations. Extreme caution. Holmes's eyes gleamed. The clockmaker new player, or an old foe under a fresh mask. Tomorrow, Watson, we cross the channel. That night, I lay awake, the cities hum a distant pulse beneath the rain's soft patter. The guild's shadow stretched beyond London, its gears turning in Vienna's ancient streets. Hargrove's sacrifice had exposed their treason, but the war was far from won. As I drifted to sleep, the echo of the cipher watch's tick lingered. In my mind, a reminder of the secrets we chased and the dangers that awaited across the sea.